I have two things on my mind. The first one is the change in the role of the safety professional coming out of the pandemic and then moving back into business as usual. You know, I think all of us felt during the pandemic how valuable safety teams were. You know, many safety professionals were reporting to CEOs or, you know, having fundamental meetings and conversations in areas that they'd possibly never had before. And many of them actually really enjoyed that situation. They didn't enjoy the pandemic, don't get me wrong, but what they enjoyed was the elevation of the profile of the health and safety professional. But the trend of what's changing now is that businesses have got other things on their mind. And so the role of the health and safety professional and the profession is changing yet again to something different.
It's about listen, it's about not just try to build consensus, okay? But just giving an example about the psychological safety. Last year, I went in a company doing a diagnostic, and when I arrived in the plant, I see the big banner, 300 days without accidents. Wow, okay, it's a good number. I start doing discussions, interviews, focal groups, discussions. And after one discussions, I leave the room and went in and go to the bathroom. And one lady, just inside the bedroom, she say, I would like to talk to you. I say, okay, what's happened? This big placard, this big banner, not is true. Yesterday we had an accident, but the guy is goes to the hospital, goes to home. He's not well, but they don't adjust the number. They change because they are using the day off, you know, to using the day to this guy giving treatment. Yeah. So why these things happen? It's by psychological safety. Okay, they don't report, they don't have trust. They don't have transparency. So how can I leave my hands and say something if I don't feel safety to talk? For me, the value of psychological safety is sometimes we are trying to do the work in a safety way. Machinery safety, electrical safety, preparedness to emergency, but we don't have the environment to talk. Not is safe to talk.
Safety professionals, we are very used to think about simulations and risk management and crisis management. Not everybody in the business in other areas does this.
Yes.
And I can tell you this from being in the other side right now, and you could see that probably too. And I think that that's the moment, and I have in fact right now the safety professionals are helping the business on the risk management exactly to anticipate any possible issue that we can have that we probably could not deliver the business. Because when I entered in the position, there was a situation exactly related to this. The lack of risk management, the lack of anticipation of the problems led to a huge problem that we had on the business.
I was in a training these days with a scientist of data, and then he was explaining how we are going to live with the different generations, from the builders and baby boomers, X generation and Z millennials and so on. I think there are more. But at the end of the training, something caught my attention. He used 3 words that we need to work on. It is not easy. Why? Because I'm facing this challenge now in Shell. You have the guys, seniors, a lot of experience on many decades working, engineering and so on. And you have the guys coming, very technological, using AI, and they are so fast, but we are facing some conflicts.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today, open this podcast with 3 colleagues that come to participate. Today will be a different podcast. We have a game podcast, so I separate some questions, strategic and good questions to discuss, to be here, good conversation with these colleagues. So first of all, I would like to call Leah Mayor. Leah is a good colleague. We worked together in the past, and I think she comes and have good things to share with us. Leah, I would like that you introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I am Leah Mayor. I have 30 years of professional experience. I have been in different segments and different companies, different areas. Nowadays, I'm Vice President of Research and Development for Bayer Latin American Crop Science.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, okay? So now I would like to call Rogério, Nersissian. He comes from Brazil, is a good colleague. So Rogério, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Andreza. I'm very happy as well to be here. It's a great opportunity. Yeah, as you mentioned, I'm Rogério Nersissian, working in Shell 28 years, and almost of the time in health and safety and environment. I'm manager these days, and yeah, much more to come. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. So it's good to be here with you, my friend. So now I would like to invite Megan Tranter, my colleague. We work together. She will share with us different insights. So be attention. Megan, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And actually, it's really interesting that the 4 of us are here together. 3 of us have actually worked together in previous lives. So it's old friends, and then we have a new friend. But I think, Jose, you are old friends with Andreza and Leah. So I am Dr. Megan Tranter. I've been working in the field of health and safety now for over 3 decades, but I don't like always telling people how long I've been working in the field for. I actually started my career in Australia and then moved to the US more than 20 years ago, and have held some of the top global environment, health and safety jobs in some really big companies and names that you may know of. So places like PepsiCo and Amazon and Netflix. I'm very happy to be here and to spend a bit of time with you all.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I would like, explain for you guys how our conversation will all, this amazing guest will work. I have prepared here some questions, to help, to guide our discussion and making sure we bring a lot of value to everyone who is watching our podcast, Do you accept this challenge, Special questions. I will take a question and I will invite someone to ask, Let's start?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I take one question. I will open here. I will read the question first, What are the risks and benefits of integrating the safety agenda and governance into ESG. Leah, we can start with you.
Okay, we can start. So first of all, before I answer your question, just thank you very much again for the invitation. It's really good to share this table with all of you. So thinking about the question, I would say that, well, I'll start maybe by the benefits. When we think maybe about the ESG arena that we are talking about, I think that could be as extensive as what we want it to be. And I think that that's a good thing in terms of the messages that you want to take to the company, outside of the company. I think very related in terms of the reputation that also and the responsibility that we have. I think it's good because this is a message for the investors. This is a message for the stakeholders overall, for the customers, and it's how serious the company is, how responsible the company is, and hence you have the less risk in the company and you're doing something good for the planet and for the people. So when you connect all of these topics in one thing, the benefits that you are maybe strengthening the message internally on the strategic way, I would say this. But if we want to think a little bit deeper about the layer in the organization, I think that you have a big umbrella as ESG, and we need to have some separation, I think, into the different topics, disciplines that we touch. Otherwise, we can be very shallow in some of the things. So, for example, on the health and safety, I think we need to have a strategy on health, safety, and environment on the company. We need to understand strategically what it means. We need to close this as much as possible and what is needed to the business strategy, and then it is meaningful. And then you need to touch each one of the things differently. And you can have the governance that you want. You don't need to have just one committee of doing things. You can have separate, and then each company would do this differently. So that's a bit what I think, that there are benefits. But if you don't do this right, and if you don't really separate things on the right moment of the company, thinking about the context that we are, you may...
I think your point about risk is, if you agree with me, is about how you design the governance model.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Rogério, Miga, do you want to add some comment about this? Risks and benefits?
Yeah, I can add a couple here, and I really liked what Leah was saying. In particular for me, I think what's been interesting over the last few months, and perhaps even more than a year now, is the viewpoint in which industry and the community has about ESG as a whole. And, we're at this time, we're at the end of April 2025, and the world is changing a lot. And so I think one of the risks with ESG is that if it is not the flavor of the month anymore, if it's not something that people and communities think is important, then if health and safety in particular is deeply wedded to ESG principles and reasons for doing something, then we may have quite a big risk there.
Yeah. I love what you say.
Yeah. Important mention, how you can see the movements.
Yes.
Political, impacted the ESG agenda. Okay, Rogério, close.
Very good.
Yours.
Yeah, first of all, again, thanks, Andreza, for the opportunity. Very good to be here with you guys. And Leah described very well, especially for the benefits. It's a huge program. But looking at the other sides for the risk, I was thinking in terms of bias. It depends on the professional leading the process. Sometimes you prefer to lead safety, topics. At the other side, you can put much more, effort on the environmental ones and governance. So it depends on the people who are leading the process. You can miss something. So the ideal is to have much more on the balance of the program. Not put focus only one thing, but you should, to see the whole process. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Excellent point. Good. The first round was okay. Let's go to the second round. Good conversation with my friends. Okay, let's see. How can you connect the safety strategy within the company? Miga, this is for you.
Can I just say I'm loving this game? Don't know who wrote the questions, but they're really good questions, and hopefully you all enjoy them as well. So how can you connect the safety strategy with the company? You know, the biggest way I think about this is thinking about and understanding the context and the nuances of a business. So it's important for us as health and safety leaders to actually understand what a company is trying to do, what type of constraints they may have, what type of goals do the different business leaders or perhaps even a board have, and actually line them up between the goals that they're setting for health and safety with the business goals. Because if you don't do that, you're going to end up just sitting on an island. You know, I don't know how many people come and visit us at the island. You know, it might need quite a bit of effort to come and see us. But if we think about our goals as being part of the overall business goals, it just fits much better with the strategy. We can also think about what is a business undergoing at a point in time. So, for example, a business might be having certain profitability or revenue targets that they've set in place. Maybe they are trying to grow really quickly, or maybe it's a more bureaucratic or blue chip type company where it's pretty stable. So when you understand what the business goals are and set your strategy congruent to that, then it actually helps people understand what you're trying to do and bring things along with you.
Wow, excellent. Né? How can integrate? Lia, Rogério, please, can you add something?
I think that Megan was perfect on what you're saying. And we see, I think what I can say is the opposite. What I have read seen is that if you don't connect what you do with the business strategy, then I truly believe that you have a huge probability to fail on what you do, because you don't get the buy-in from the leaders, because they will be focused on something else. So, yes, they say.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I would like to give my
Iceland.
Yeah.
I would like to give my personal experience looking to the 5 years working in a power plant construction. This is a JV in Shell producing power, right? So when I was there, they gave me two things: deliver and develop. So if you look just on the technical stuff, you're gonna be limited. You know, you need to understand the business. Megan was teaching us in a masterclass about connecting, your job into the business. I think it is important for our professionals not only working on the technical stuff, but understanding the business purpose, the strategy. In this case, we are generating power. So we need to understand the deadlines with the government, the legal aspects, and everything else, including union. So you have a lot of things, not only for just avoiding incidents,
Yes.
but looking to the reputation. You have much more, than we were trained for. So I think this vision, it could enlarge your future. Yeah.
I would like to open this question because this is really important question. How we can measure this? If I connect the safety with the strategy, okay, how we can measure if we are in a good way?
I think it's easy when you see someone seated in the meeting with the board. If you're only talking about the very specific topic, they just look at you, they will say, well, we need more from you. So your view, your plan should consider much more. I will give you an example. Business continuity plan. We were working during the pandemics. You can imagine the pressure, people dying, a lot of desperation, fear. So you should connect to the business to survive, literally. So I think this is one of the examples that I can give you. Yeah.
You know what? The other thing that I was thinking here, I think that the role of a leader, regardless if that's an HSC leader or any other leader of the company, is really helping the teams to thrive, whatever they want to do. If that's in their career, if that's just things that they need to guarantee a good environment where they are to do this. Yeah. If you start disconnecting what we do from what the company wants, especially in terms of the people strategy of the company, because the people strategy is also part of the business strategy. If we don't have people that are, in a good environment where they can thrive, where the well-being of them are not being really seen, and if you don't care about them, you're not getting the results and the productivity. And I think that we have worked in a place that we remember that we put a program that we called Safety Guardians.
Yes.
And it was one of the plants that we had the worst results ever. It was one that was really, really difficult in terms of culture, in terms of, it was an acquisition that we had done at that point in time. So it was really hard. So all of the indicators that we had in that site, quality, productivity, people, safety, they were bad. We started with the Safety Guardians, and then the way that we put that together was kind of how you care about each other. There was very specific things that they had to do. And what we saw was a cascade effect that all of the other KPIs started to get good.
Sure.
So when we talk about this connection, the business connection, we also come to the individual level. And at this individual level, you come back and then you collectively deliver. So that's why I think it's so important.
And I think safety can help in this connection.
Sure.
And with the results also, because we are talking about care.
Mm-hmm.
So care yourself, care your colleague, care your production, your machinery, care the environment, care the customer.
Yeah.
Care. Okay, let's go. Second round, third round now. What are the current trends in safety? Rogério, trends, global trends, what do you see?
Yeah, I think it is an important question because you have different views. You have different cultures, in terms of companies and countries and
Markets.
people. At the end of the day, we are different. So the expectation is different. But let's talk about some trends. Some people are talking much more about the human performance, for example. Another group is saying the different safety. And I think we need to go back to the foundation. Sometimes we are missing the basics. Caring people, caring the environmental, care, the reputation. But I think people are trying to invent something. In my view, we need to go back and see where we are, where we want to go, and the most important, how to do it. Yeah.
I think everybody here can contribute with this
Yeah.
question. But I would like, when you're talking about back into the basics, simplification.
Yes. That's it.
Simplification. Okay. Lea, Megan, trends.
Do you want to go?
I think that for me, it's about, I need to think closer. Sorry, guys. I think that for me, it's about how we connect in this very, volatile, ambiguous, fast world where we are. And how do we connect inside of it in terms of safety? So I think that coming back to really understand what's the level of the culture where we are, it's for me something that is important, because I wouldn't say that we have one tool or one thing fits all. So that's my opinion.
And I have two things on my mind. The first one is the change in the role of the safety professional coming out of the pandemic and then moving back into business as usual. I think all of us felt during the pandemic how valuable safety teams were. Many safety professionals were reporting to CEOs or, having fundamental meetings and conversations in areas that they'd possibly never had before. And many of them actually really enjoyed that situation. They didn't enjoy the pandemic, don't get me wrong, but what they enjoyed was the elevation of the profile of the health and safety professional. But the trend of what's changing now is that businesses have got other things on their mind. And so the role of the health and safety professional and the profession is changing yet again to something different. And one of the things that is on their mind, the leaders of today, and certainly I think all of us see this a lot, is the massive and rapid increase and understanding of technology. You know, we keep all hearing about AI. You know, the reality is that there have been very significant technological changes, you know, over many years. The latest one that we're experiencing is just a very fast acceleration of various things that are now coming more to mainstream. So people are asking questions about those, as well as asking very reasonable questions around the safety of AI, productivity impacts, you know, the future of work, all these existential questions that are being asked at this time as well.
I would like to explore one point. I think AI, safety difference, culture, but I think one word for you to help me with this: generations.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking exactly.
Because this is a trend, important trend now.
I would like to go deeper on this way. I belong to a group called Generations. This is not a 50 plus, okay? It's more than it. It's connecting generations. I was in a training these days with a scientist of data, and then he was explaining how we are going to live with the different generations, from the builders and, you know, baby boomers, X generation, and Z millennials, and so on. I think there are more. But at the end of the training, something caught my attention. He used 3 words that we need to work on. It is not easy. Why? Because I'm facing this challenge now in Shell. You have the guys, seniors, a lot of experience on many decades working engineering and so on. And you have the guys coming, very technological, using AI, and they are so fast, but we are facing some conflicts. This is real situation. But at the end of the training, I think was in my mind 3 words: humility, respect, and curiosity. So I think we need to work on these pieces again. It is not easy to have some difficult conversations. Many of us probably are dad and mom, we have kids, and sometimes it is not easy to them to listen no. It is a big problem. For us, sometimes it is easy to deal with, but not for them. But they are so expert on technology. It is easy to say, hey, I don't care. No. We need to work together. So for me, generations, it is a big one for this moment.
Yes,
it is.
Okay, with technologies,
yes, it is.
with safety differently, all this
perfect
philosophy about safety is important to integrate it.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing related to generations, if we think about the work itself, we had always had different generations, right? I have started working, you too, as all of us, very young in career, and we had also to have relationships with the people that were almost retiring. So this living together as generations is something that had ever happened. Yeah. The point that I see today is that the way that the new generations deals with authority changed a lot over time.
Yes, this is the point.
Yeah,
excellent.
And I think that also we like I'm an X generation, and then we tend to think sometimes that we know everything, that we had all of these years, and then we had all of this experience, and then we know many things. And we don't have the humility to understand that AI, for example, is something that they are having a great, way to work in this new technologies that sometimes we don't have, and then we sometimes don't see that we can learn with them. So I think that's something that I think we need to explore more, and not only in safety, but I think that in everything, it's not how it used to be, and then we need to find out how is the different way of having this joint relationship.
And I think these 3 words can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very
Respect,
much.
curiosity.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go. Next one.
Next one.
Let's see. How can you develop high potential in HSE? Start with you.
Okay, how do we develop high potential in HSE? You know, the way I think about this is probably from two areas. One of them is how do I develop myself? And then also how do I develop my team? And so both of them take a level of understanding about human dynamics and how different people think and how they all work. I have really enjoyed Simon Sinek's book on the infinite game, but I also really like Patrick Lencioni's work, especially his book called The Advantage, which is all around organizational health and how do you build a healthy team. So rather than, for instance, only focusing on metrics and results and looking so closely to the business and what is happening, that you're actually thinking more broadly about what people need and what they are bringing to the organization themselves as well. So what I like doing, and, you know, I've led teams as small as myself up to, you know, teams that are several thousand in size. And I've led teams in both safety, and I'm similar to Leia that I actually did have a stint where I wasn't working in safety either. And what all of this taught me is that there is, first of all, it's important for the team leader and ourselves to understand what we're trying to do. You know, if we aren't clear on what our mission is and what and actually agree on what it is, then you'll find people are just, you know, either thinking about themselves or they're rowing in the wrong direction. You know, once you can get those words together where you can see what is it that we're trying to achieve, then you think about how are we going to do it together? How do we operate? What are our values? And then we continue to move on then to actually understand what is the most important thing right now and then move forward from there. One other thing that I love is understanding that there are many different types of human beings that make up this world, and that myself as a leader or as a person, I'm not always right. And that is very hard to believe sometimes, that I'm not always right, but it's the absolute truth. And that if we just take a moment to understand other people, whether it's the way they think, the way they speak, the way they operate, the way they have had different experiences in life, if we can just take a moment to understand people and who they are, we're much more likely to get the best out of high-performing teams.
Mm-hmm. Excellent point. I think we have a pen here when you talk about it, high potentials, because we saw in companies that have some moments, they have a good team, and after the leader goes out for a different position or in for another company, we lost everything. Leah,
I think that you touched a great point, because I think that, well, there are two things in this way. Sometimes you have like the high potentials. Usually I define high potentials as those people that you put them in a dark room and then you throw out the key somewhere and then you just leave from there and they find a way to find the key, or not finding the key, but they leave the room somehow. So this type of people are great, of course, to have in the team. You don't need everybody to be like that. You need the different types of people. But I think that having a high potential in your team, or if you have a high potential in other areas of the organization, and you put these people to come into an HSC area, for example, to learn and then to spread out afterwards all of this culture, I think that you can have these change agents. However, if you have a high potential sometimes, and I've seen this happening, exactly what you're saying, usually the high potentials are those that grow very fast, like in 1 or 2 years, they're changing. And sometimes these people didn't really learn what is the real meaning of being a leader, what's our responsibility as a leader, and they tend to do everything alone, or just guiding them, or just while he's the leader in that team, he understands and he oversees everything. And when he leaves, he didn't give other types of tools for the team to lead by themselves. So they're not thinking about legacy. So I think that every leader, regardless if he's high potential or not, and that's for me the biggest mistakes of the high potentials are exactly what you're saying, because they wanted to deliver, they wanted to, and they're good at this because they can absorb a lot of things, but sometimes working too much alone. So understand and expand also what leadership means for the team. I think it's something that is you need to have as a goal, you need to have as an outcome all the time. It's how I make this team more empowered, how I learn, I teach, and somehow to give opportunities or experiences, not only training, but maybe on-the-job training or things that are more experiences that they really can learn, maybe by doing, by making some mistake that are inside of non-risk, not doing any violation, right? But that is important, this culture of testing and learning for them to understand. So I think that's how I see this, Andreza.
I was checking one word that I loved. I think we need to combine to high potential the competence to building trust and autonomy.
Yep.
Yeah, yesterday Megan was talking about building trust. You know, when I see people like the high potentials, I've seen a lot in my career, but many of them failed during the process. That's why I think this it takes time. You need to recognize people that shining eyes, you know. This is hearts and minds, not only the minds and not only the hearts, but this is a combination. And for me, the good high potential, it's gonna be a good disciple walking together. If you want to leave a legacy, these people should to prove during the process they are loyal, you know, they are true, and they can follow you first, even they are better than you. So in safety area, it is not a competition, it is a mission. Because if it is a competition, you'll never develop no one, only yourself.
Yeah.
But when you understand the real mission or the purpose, you're gonna try like a radar, look into the people and recognize who is the next Rogério, Lia, Megan, Andreza. So that's the grace of the process. We are gonna work together, and one time you say, now you go. So I think that's the process. Yeah.
Good.
Not easy,
No.
but it's possible. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. 2 points, different but combined. Perfect. Thank you. Let's go. Let's go because our journey continue here. Okay, let's see. How can you build strong relationships between the safety department and other areas? Lia, start with you.
I think that we need to recognize and to find the common mission, the common purpose, and the common goal, the business goal that we have, because I think that we can help each other all the time. It's about building trust, as you said, as you're saying. Whenever you build this trust, whenever you show for the other stakeholders where you are that you can help each other, it's not about what I want to do and what you want to do. We are not in a silo, but we need to think as, with this enterprise mindset, and then together we can, deliver something better together. I think this is a way to see. This demands an intentionality. Sometimes we come too much into what we want to present to the people instead to understand and to do very simple questions. What is this person interested about what I am going to talk to him? So let me see, how can I put my shoes in myself in the other's shoes, and then trying to find this connection and start by that. That's what I would start.
I think we need to be open to listen.
Yeah, sure.
And talk different languages, because sometimes we are talking just the language of safety to operations.
Yep.
Okay, Rogério.
Yeah, I think it is important to listen. You need to create a psychological safety environment, you know? It is not easy. For me, it's about, if I could resume in one word, it's maturity.
Maturity, of course.
You know, not only what I say, not only what I know, but we need to listen people, as you said. And, you know, sometimes it's hard conversations, not only my point of view. We need to understand the common target, as Leah mentioned, what the business wants to. And after, we need to discuss, but much more listen, understand. And the safety professional, we are trained, by the way, we are trained to give answers all the time, instructions, procedures. We like to talk, we like to teach, but to develop the whole process, you need to consider the engineers, the doctors, lawyers, you know, everybody, the high executives. You need to consider, I like this word, we need to consider others. It's much better, you know. So I think in this way we can achieve much better results.
In marketing, we have the customer centricity.
Yeah.
So in safety, we have the human centricity.
Yes.
So if you take the word human and put all the departments, all the areas, and understand the needs, the worries, and how we can add value for all these areas, I think we need to discover this. Miga, close this question for us.
You know, I had a boss once who used to talk about stacked wins. And I don't even know the original framework or where it came from, but the concept is something along the lines that when you have a win or an achievement, if you can have more than one happening at the same time, you keep stacking those wins and they become incrementally better. So the way I think about this question is the more stacked wins you can get, the more that others in different departments will also want to work with safety, because they will see you as someone who is bringing across something positive for them, an achievement for them. So it's collaboration with them. But also, yes, you know, safety might be looking for a win around reducing the risk of machine guarding, but also perhaps operations is looking for productivity improvements. Perhaps HR or, again, operational leaderships are looking for something that will improve organizational health and the way people think about the company and how they feel about working for the company. So I think if you can get stacked wins, then that's probably a really good way to think about working with other teams as well.
Perfect. Listen again.
Listen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Good question, this. I love it. What are the key learnings from managing AHSE during the pandemic? I think every you guys can ask this question. So, Rogério.
Yeah, this is like a movie in my mind. As I told you before, my last 5 years was working a project with a joint venture. When everybody was working from home, I was the only one in 1,000 of people that has, you know, the responsibility to go there in the field, because it was a big project, you know, deadlines with the government and so on, the pressure from the shareholders, stakeholders, you know very well. But for me, the best learning I got from that moment is to put people at the center. Of course, we got fear to die. No one know what would happen at the day, you know, after. What we'll see in this moment, it is an opportunity. Why? Because not only for the physical, biological, chemical risks, but we could see a lot of mental issues.
Yes.
So for me, I think this is a great opportunity because people got stressed, you know, depression, leaving, you know, the job, suicide, many places, not only, I am not saying in that project, but We're seeing in news a lot. And then we are working on this one. In Brazil, for example, this is a law, NR1. It's coming on May. It's starting not only because the law, the regulation, but now we need to work with the psychosocial risks. And this is quite interesting. According to the health ministry in Brazil, the cases are doubling the last years. People leaving the work because of the stress, and we have a lot of problems, harassment. If you're going to see the data, for example, the divorce multiply many times. This is crazy.
Yes, I saw it.
You can ask what's going on.
Yeah.
So for this reason, the main learning, we are going to see people not only for the physical ones. There is a story, there's a family behind, there is some traumas. We need to be much more aware in terms of care of people. Not say, hey, this is nothing. No, come on. You are so weak. No. People are struggling with this kind of thing. So we need to learn much more ahead. But I think it's the collaboration. We need to work together. Yeah, that's my point.
But I think during the pandemic, we developed different competencies.
Oh, yeah.
Lea, can you talk about?
I think that for me, in terms of learning and competencies, I think pandemic definitely was one of those moments in the career and in my personal life that will be there forever. So by that time, I was still on the HSC area. So I was leading the Latin America HSC for the 3 divisions at Bayer. And we had in these 3 divisions totally different realities. So the commercial teams used to work totally different. Some of them in operations in the middle of the fields in the plants. Some others were just in the context with the doctors on the pharma business, and some others directly with the drugstores, on the consumer health business. The way that we had to create very quick plans, and I'm saying quick like a week, something that you cannot wait too long because everything was closed and then we could not stop. So the first big competence, I would say, is know how to articulate very fast with people, be open and flexible to understand what we can do, what we can give in, and we must give in these moments too, and working together. I think at this time, it was also, we always say that a big crisis also is an opportunity, and that's the jargon, I know, but that was really what happened personally for me. But also I see for many other people that they developed this capacity to think bigger, to think more strategically, to think critical, to find solutions, to be empowered to do some things because we didn't have time. On the other hand, understanding very well that we need to get together, have this crisis, how to deal with this crisis too, and be very disciplined about what to do. So it was not a chaos. We could not allow a chaos in that moment. So I think that there was so many different things that I truly believe when you put people in the middle of the chaos, we have an ability that is much bigger than what we imagine. So that were kind of the competencies, I would say. And personally for me, in terms of the learning, was how collectively we can be much stronger when we're together. Personally for me, there was the moment where I changed completely my area. Now I'm in research and development for plant breeding and genetics, which is, I'm a chemical engineer. So there's nothing to do with what I used to I was trained. But one of the things that my leader said for me at that point in time was that the fact that you were the lead of the crisis and all of these other competencies showed up, we could see other things on leadership that we needed in other areas. And I think that HSE professionals, all of the HSE professionals, we have that a lot because in any crisis, we're there doing some things in the moment that some things happen. So I think we could use more these abilities that we have to also use this to our career, to think more about this and for our development.
Articulate, thinking strategic. Wow, good. Minha.
I think it taught us that we can do really hard things. And that, a lot of time in health and safety, we take our time consulting and considering different risks and different frameworks or paradigms to adopt. We think about the legislation and the risk that the business is willing or is not willing to tolerate. But when the pandemic came, we just had to change so quickly with what we were doing. And it wasn't easy, but we all got through it. And I think it does show us that we can just do incredibly hard things. I was living in Seattle, and I still live in Seattle, when the pandemic first came to the US shores. But Seattle was one of the first cities that actually shut down in the US. And I'll never forget it, because we finished work on a certain day and the leaders or the managers were saying, hey, take your laptop home with you tonight. You may not be coming in tomorrow, but we don't know what's going on. And that was the beginning of, a very long time of not coming back into the office and so forth. But the other thing for me is I worked for actually 3 companies during the extent of the pandemic, 2 of them in a health and safety capacity. And both of those industries were still producing. One of them was a pharmaceutical company. And so people still need their medicine. So it also, I think, taught us, and the learnings from it is that often as safety, we put up a lot of barriers as to why we can't do some things. But actually, there is a solution to nearly every problem that is put in front of us. And the second industry I worked in was film and television. And that's a very interesting industry, because when you're making films and TV shows, you can't wear a mask. The actors can't wear a mask. There's certain things that get done. You can't be 3 feet or a meter away from one another. So the way of thinking and innovation that they had to think of to be able to continue to operate, I think really stretched the health and safety profession and the industry as well. And I often reminisce and think back to all of these amazing things that health and safety professionals did during this time. And I wonder lately whether we've lost a little bit more of that, innovation and curiosity and drive now that we've gone back to business as usual.
Wow, that's a great point. Excellent.
I think we can add one more point.
Yes, of course.
I think in terms of collaboration, we develop a lot between companies and people, professionals, much more on the business continuity plan. A lot of people and companies, they just don't know how to start. Moving from one day to another, the equipment, the data, the server, IT, department, safety, health, a lot of things change from one day to another. So we need to be prepared. That's my message. For the business continuity plan, it's not only a document to say, hey, check, we have it. No, we need to be in a real world prepared. Yeah.
Doing simulations, no?
Yes.
I think you need to simulate business continuity plan, the crisis, no? We need to simulate crisis.
Yeah.
Okay. In aviation, this is common.
All the time.
All the time. Every 6 months, they have the crisis simulation. So I think you can learning from this kind of business.
Yeah.
But I would like just to add, the innovation will be possible because the collaboration.
Yeah.
I think we're feeling this, we're facing this in pandemic. Okay, let's go. Our game is a game podcast. Let's see this. How can you build leadership with a safety-focused mindset? Rogério?
Is that what you want? Go ahead. Yeah. The sole expert on this one. Okay.
I think all of us, we have been through this. So I think that I say that safety mindset is something that we need to have this open mindset. And we know that there's this mindset book that says that, people have this open mindset and the fixed mindset, and we grow with this, right? And with safety, I think that we are going to see across the world a very different way of building this, because I think it's so enrooted in our cultures that it's also something that I can imagine for you, Megan, that you had to work with so many different cultures in the world, how to understand, to build this, because there's no one size fits all in some aspects. In the end, I think the heart of everything is in the behavior and how you create the reason why you do all of this. But I'm going just to give an example. I think that in Brazil, I'm Brazilian, like we don't have a culture in schools about, what's a hazard, what's dangerous. And I think that's much the opposite. Like you admire the hero. Our culture is a lot about this. We don't have a lot of rules in the school. We don't talk a lot about safety in school. We don't have this. So you don't have a culture where children really grows up with the mindset that you need to be cautious. So hence, when these people arrives in the workplace, this is something that it's a new idea that you have to put in their minds. For those that are open mindset, any new idea comes. For those that are fixed mindset, it's much different. If you go to Germany, I have worked with Germans, it's totally different because they are used to follow the rules since that they are kids. So I think that I wouldn't say there's only one way. In my perspective. But of course, there are some strategies that would make it easier. And I leave you with the strategies.
So really cool, like what is in my mind, it's much more on the leading by example. It doesn't matter if you just say, do this or do that. If you don't do it, totally discredit. People just trying to teach, but they don't follow the rules. It's not sustainable, right? And for me, again, should be from your personal encounter with safety. If you are vulnerable, if you have a story to tell people, they will follow you because it's real. It's not only a PowerPoint presentation. And of course, if you do when nobody's watching you, this is the perfect example because you believe what you are doing and people can realize the difference. People are true or not. So again, leadership for me, it's much more about, leading by example. This is one of the faces, but I think it is important to mention that.
I think this is a common question. All the time, the people are doing this question. Oh, how can you change mindset? Please give me like a medical prescription, You see, do this, do that, so change this. So what I learned, there is no medical prescription. There is a context. We need to work in this context. Do you want to add something?
I agree. And I actually talk about context a lot. I learned that word even more than ever in the last company that I worked for. Where they talked a lot about understanding context, because it means that there can be different perceptions or opinions or ways of doing things depending on what the context is. And perhaps this also applies then to the question about how do you build a safety mindset and a safety culture, especially with leadership. And in my experience, what I found is that there is no panacea. Sometimes an organization's culture, so the organization's culture, not an individual's or a country's culture, but sometimes an organization's culture does permeate everything. And if you're really lucky to work in an organization that has that, that becomes the hook. Because then, if you want to work there and if your colleagues want to work there, there may be certain values that you need to align with and have certain leadership behaviors. So connecting health and safety on to those leadership behaviors and those values can be a little bit of an easy button. There's not many easy buttons, but it can be an easier button to press because you're then speaking the same language as your colleagues. If you're talking about an organization who has leadership values around, let's say, curiosity or delivering results, then you can talk about health and safety in that same way and your colleagues will understand the language that you're speaking. But certainly, if you're in a a company that, let's say, might be really diverse, and each of the different sub-businesses or sub-units have different ways of thinking and doing things, then you'll want to pull a different lever. The lever might be caring, like you talk all the time. It's like you were talking about, Jose, as well. There's just different ways that you can pull levers to try and build the safety culture.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Leadership.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let's see now. Would you like to start with you, Megan? Okay, let's see. How can you build psychological safety?
Psychological safety.
Yes.
Yeah. We should talk first of all what this is, because one thing I'm noticing at the moment is people seem to be confusing psychological safety, which I think Amy Edmondson has become very famous for, versus psychosocial risk. And so we're going to talk about psychological safety, which is, about having an environment where people feel comfortable enough and safe enough that they can contribute and give their input and their advice, or, about anything really.
I agree with you. The confusion about this, because psychological safety is more about the environment that you create for the people working, right?
That's right.
Yes. And I listened, something very impacted me was the mission of safety is people return to home. Okay, perfect. Well-being, and the psychological safety is they want to return here. So tomorrow they want to come. They want to work here. They want to be part of this team. So how can build this?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I think Amy Edmondson talks about is building this environment of trust. And how do you build that environment of trust? And it comes from all different types of levels and similar things to, I think, what we've been talking about here a lot today in the context of safety, but then it also fits with psychological safety. So it's, how do people feel when they, for example, suggest an idea, or are they even going to put their hand up or speak up and suggest an idea? How do they feel, or what is the response when that happens? How do leaders lead? How do people treat one another? All of those type of questions. And I think the thing that I've learned is it's a very complex topic, because the way that you or I might want to be, for instance, spoken to, or how our ideas might be received could be totally different to other people. And so it means that we all need to be much more open-minded and put the effort in to actually understand our colleagues, understand who they are as people and what they need, because they have so much goodness to give to an organization. And if only we could spend the time to understand them and, what's important to them, then perhaps that's the first stepping stone in building psychological safety.
Yeah.
Rogério?
We need to build this psychological safety, not only one department, not for the HR or the legal or the safety and health, but in a whole organization. So it depends on you are treated, when you give some bad news.
How you're facing bad news. Huh?
Oh yeah. No retaliation policy. It's easy to see when you look at the indicators, 0, 0, 0. You say, wow, that company is very good. I could say, well, maybe not. Why? Because people, they are not reporting anything. When you go to the field and talk to the people, Andreza, we've been in a company a few months ago talking to the people. You can listen everything. This is a psychological safety, maybe, but they are open. But the question is what the company does with those reports. You come back 1 month later, maybe, hey, where are those guys? Oh, they were dismissed. You say, okay, so let's understand what's going on in this company. So you, not only for the policy, the procedure, but you, on the real life, you need to see what they are treating, how they are doing that. So I think for me, that's the point. This is not a program. This is not a campaign. This is a process. It takes time, a long time, to get those environmental, psychologically safe.
And you do see organizations changing, don't you, depending on who the leaders are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. That's the first point. Yes.
Because I think that there is the role of leadership and psychological safety for me is the critical thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the leader that is there. There is also the intentionality that you want to put on the team to have these conversations, because fear is so deep in every one of human beings. Fear of being ridiculous of doing a question, fear of losing the job, fear of, I'm not going to put this. And Patrick Lencioni has a great book on this, the 5 dysfunctions of leadership. The basic of this is building trust. And when you build trust, you build the psychological safety, because if you don't have trust, and then you don't have the conflicts, the healthy conflicts, and then you don't have teams that are productive, and then you have all of this. And we need to start somehow. And the leader has this role of helping also the teams, because sometimes it's not just about the leader. You don't want to feel ridiculous. You don't want to get in conflict with your colleagues of that same team. So that is the role of the leader, to create the type of environment that really, really guarantees that we can discuss about bad things. We can have absolutely different opinions. And in fact, we want them to come. We want to have this type of diversity of thoughts. And then we include these people with these different thoughts in the same conversation. And that is okay if we just don't agree. I think that sometimes we have this culture of consensus that is bad in this aspect. And then you don't create the psychological safety, because everybody needs to agree and everybody needs to have consensus. And sometimes consensus is not possible. And you just, okay, this for 5. Who wants this? Okay, let's so experiment. Let's try it. Okay, I understand you don't agree with me, but let's try it. If it doesn't work, and then I do something else. Sometimes we don't have time to this. So we need to have a difficult discussions, and then the leader comes with the role about, we understand, that's good, great, and let's see what we can do. That's the best what we can have with the information that we have right now. So let's move forward too, and then we don't get stuck on just in the middle of the conflict too. It's complex. It's
Complex is about listen, is about not just try to build a consensus.
Yeah.
Okay. But just giving an example about the psychological safety. Last year, I went in a company doing a diagnostic, and when I arrive in the plant, I see the big banner, 300 days without accidents. Wow, okay, it's a good number. I start doing discussions, interviews, focal groups, discussions. And after one discussions, I leave the room and went in and go to the bedroom. And one lady, just inside the bedroom, she say, I would like to talk to you. I say, okay, what's happened? This big placard, this big banner, not is true. Yesterday we had an accident, but the guy is goes to the hospital, goes to home. He's not well, but they don't adjust the number.
Oh
They
my
just
God.
change, because they are using the day off, to using the day to this guy giving treatment.
Yeah.
So why these things happen? It's by psychological safety. Okay, they don't report, they don't have trust, they don't have transparency. So how can I leave my hands and say something if I don't feel safety to talk? For me, the value of psychological safety is sometimes we are trying to do the work in a safety way. Machinery safety, electrical safety, preparedness to emergency, but we don't have the environment to talk. Not as safe to talk. So I think for me, this is a big issue.
I like what you're saying, and I think that sometimes the psychological safety is not even possible to be built in some cases, depending on how we set the HSE strategy and the KPIs. Because if we're saying that we have our KPIs and we want 0 accident, and you're going to punish people if they have some type of accident, or you're going to investigate, and then you have the blaming culture, they will never say anything because they will want to keep that number in that way. Instead of really thinking that we can measure differently, we can have other types of leading indicators or even, I'm going very hard, not thinking about the softer, the human competences. I'm just talking about something very tangible. And if we don't have this strategic mindset of putting everything together and understand the causes, the consequences, and the effects on when we create a strategy, if we don't link with the business, if we don't link with the people, if we don't understand the whys behind, we can have a big mess on the organization because of this.
What you're also talking about here is measures of success.
Yep.
And I think, it's a very slippery slope and a difficult conversation. I remember once one of the best leaders that I ever worked with said to me that the goals that I'd set for health and safety when I was, a top health and safety leader, that they expected me to fail some of those goals. And I had come from a company where you got green. Everything was always green because it was linked to your bonus and whether you might get promoted and so forth. And so it was such a shock and a surprise that this leader said to me, these goals that you've set, they're too easy. And I'm like, well, and tried to argue back that how they weren't so easy. But the leader was right. And what they were really saying to me was, and they actually said this in no uncertain terms, was that I expect that you're going to set goals that are so hard that you won't be able to achieve all of them. And so the person actually gave this space to be more innovative and to try some different things and to set challenges that we had no idea how we would even achieve them. Whereas in other organizations, you had plan A, B, and C because by jolly, you were going to hit that goal. So I think this links back to psychological safety, even when you're talking about things like goals or what does success mean. A place that has good psychological safety, and this is relevant for health and safety teams, is somewhere that says, okay, yes, I want us to hit the goals, but by the way, if we don't hit them, at least we can learn from it. Is there something else that we can achieve from it? Or did we set the goal that was just so audacious and so difficult that we got 60% of the way there? But if we would have set an easier goal, yeah, we might have hit it, but we didn't even go as far compared to by setting an audacious goal. So I think all of that fits together as well.
And it comes back to what you said, context.
Yes.
It depends so much on how all of the company culture, the context where we are, is set for people. That's
the fourth principle, the human performance. Yeah, the context drives behavior. We need to understand in a good, context in terms of culture. But I remember another day, I sent a big slide to an executive outside Shell. He was talking to me, asking for some advice, and I put exactly the scoreboard like 300 days without lost time injury. I put, is to celebrate or distrust.
What happened to you?
Well, I never received. I answer the feedback. So
never talk to me
because I respect who used that. I've been talking to Andreza many times. It's okay. It's a learning process, but we need to get an evolution of the process. In the past, it's okay. 1,000. I celebrate many times. We gave gift to people, but when you're just celebrating, we are not seeing the real life. Because commercial people, they love to do it. Marketing, it's a great, moment of celebration, sent to our customers, our shareholders. Perfect. But when some bad things happen, what's your reaction? So that's the fifth principle. How to the leaders respond matters. So I think we need to learn from these incidents or situations. We need to be aware, not only,
I usually like to explore more by psychological safety.
Yeah.
But when I look the safety agenda, we return for the numbers again and again and again.
Yes, exactly.
So, the subject is so big, but in safety, we return to the numbers. So I think human organizational performance can help to build the psychological safety. I think can add value in this journey. Okay, let's go next.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, now we have more. 4 question. Is HAC a job or something broader?
I think it's much broader than
I love this question. I think, wow.
I think it's a value. I think it's, for me, truly, it's, I know that, again, another jargon, we talk a lot, safety is a value, and we need to think about what means to be a value for us, really.
Yeah.
So I think it's more connected with even ethics. It's doing the right thing when nobody's looking at you, if you're doing that right or not. So yeah, I would think that every leader should have this thinking, and we have, of course, a job about health and safety, and because we need to have things to happen and people that understand technically, and also people that could help us, other leaders, to get inspired, but it's much more.
Much more. So, oh yeah. It's something that we need to help people to find it. That's the purpose, the mission. Not only a title, not only, a job. It is a mission for me. It's a charge that people comes from the heart, that mind. They found a way to do it because it's not easy. I say all the time to people, hey, if you are working on safety, health, this is a mission. This is a noble activity. We are taking care of people. If you don't do it, please leave. Do another thing with passion. I am not saying this is romantic, only purpose, only mission. This is very beautiful to say. But the real life, you're going to be under pressure. Sometimes you're going to visit a family to live a very bad news. Everybody here on this table used to do it. We hope no more, never more. But that's the real life again. So be aware. I think we need to go deeper, trying to understand our role and do it with passion. I think that's the point here.
I come from Unilever. Unilever, you take some high potentials and put it to coordinate, to manage this agenda. So the guy comes from logistics and you spend 2 years in health and safety agenda. So it's part of the develop, because as you comment about pandemic, so how many competencies the AHSA manager use it at this moment?
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's part of the business, building this competence in health and safety.
Yeah.
Megan?
I used to think that it was just a job. So I studied health and safety at university, and actually when I studied my undergraduate degree, it was the first degree that Australia had ever offered in health and safety. So I went into this course, which, and I've said this aloud before, so Dad, don't go mad at me, but my dad actually chose the course that I did. We were moving cities, and I moved with the family, and so he chose the degree that I would do, and now the profession that I've been working in for more than 3 decades. And so I saw it at the beginning as a job. I was very technically strong. I had enormous pride and ego in how strong I was in the technical elements, especially in occupational or industrial hygiene as well. And then for me, what happened is one day, and I was nearly a decade into my career, when I was working at a company where an employee was very significantly injured. And all of a sudden I realized that, well, this is not just a job, and that there are so many more elements to this. It's not just about building a strategy, getting the data, reporting on the data, trying to convince people to do things. What I realized is that we are genuinely talking about people here. And, it's easy for safety professionals to say this all the time, in my experience, unless you have been through something quite personal yourself, it does become a little difficult to take it from the technical to more of that human side. But, even for health and safety professionals who have a deep desire to do great things for the world, you get a different feeling about the profession once you've had to go through some very difficult things and you realize that it is not all about, monitoring dust levels or noise levels or risk assessments.
Yes.
Of course. Super agree. Okay, let's go. Let's go, guys. We are closing our game. Talking about trends again, okay? What are the trends of AI in the safety field? How can technology and safety be connected? Megan, I would like to start with you.
We're all seeing a lot of information about AI, and I think part of the reason this is happening and it's getting so much airtime is especially because of generative AI. But let's be honest, there's been a lot of technological changes over the last couple of decades that have supported health and safety, whether it's things like telematics in vehicles, whether it's things like understanding maintenance requirements of large pieces of equipment. There are so many cameras, you see just drones, all of it. There have been so many things. I think at this moment in time, there's a lot of conversations about the topic of AI, but it's really focused on generative AI and the potential that brings to both accelerate work and productivity, but also the risks that it is bringing when we do not understand the algorithms or the math that has gone behind these large language models. And also for companies, their concerns about where their data goes once it starts getting fed into certain types of models as well. So, I'm actually a big optimist. I love technology. I'm always out on the forefront. I remember when I published my first book back in 1999, and this will date me, but the internet was not that big back in 1999. So I had a CD-ROM attached to the book, to show people how you would do certain things for health and safety. And I've also now led tech teams that had nothing to do with health and safety. So I'm a big believer. But I think that all of us need to continue to educate ourselves. We also need to keep experimenting and learning. Like even the people that are saying that they're the experts on something, they are literally 2 steps ahead of every single one of us because things are moving so quickly. So, we all just need to stay curious and connect with the right people and learn and experiment as we go along with this.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree on what you're bringing, and I'm a heavy user of ChatGPT. I don't say the AI. I am, and at Bayer we have our internal ChatGPT with many other, of course, languages, large language models, exactly to prevent all of this data privacy and what we have internally. And I think that I agree so much on what you bring on the need of having the curiosity to understand what to do. So it's been like almost 4 years that I left HSC area, and now I'm working on the R&D organization. And there, the area where I am is plant breeding. And in plant breeding, you imagine that we do this. We do all of the development and the research to create the seeds of soybeans, of corn, and these things. This is a 10-year process, used to be a 10-year process from the very beginning, and then we launch every year the seeds. And we could reduce, for example, from soybeans from 10 years to 6 years now because of AI. If it was not because of that and the new technologies and the way that now we genotype and then we have all of this genomic assessments and also to help us to be faster on that, we would not be able to do this. So when I see the potential that we have in this area where I am, and then we come not only for HSC, but many other areas, it always started with the curiosity to understand what can we do faster and how we can do things faster. If I think on health and safety, for example, we have been complaining a lot that safety is very bureaucratic, and then we have so much to, legislation or for the governments, or so what can we use on maybe generative AI that are coming right now that would improve the productivity of our people? And then we have, okay, safety technicians go to the field, and then they say, I can't because I have these forms that I need to do. So, but we need curiosity, and we cannot see this as a bad thing. We need to understand that as a positive, like, helper for us.
Yeah. It's interesting. Another day I received a message from the chat GPT. It's something like, I know more about you than you think. I got scary, guys. So I love technology. I'm a heavy user as well. We launched a phrase, much more sense in Portuguese than in English, but it's something like crossing fingers or crossing data. In Portuguese, it's interesting, the translation, but it is the same in English to understand. This is not about lucky. This is about crossing data, and AI, it's helping us. You're right. We need to use the data to saving time.
Yes.
For what? To go to the field, talking to the people.
Yes.
The problem it is we are going to be addicted on technology all the time and forgetting people. So that's the opposite. We need to use this to help us saving time on bureaucratic activities and leaving time to go and visit and talk to real life people. So that's my point in terms of AI.
Yes. Look in the benefits.
Yes.
And understand very well.
Oh, yeah.
Save time.
Otherwise,
save time, be more, effective.
Yes, effective. Yeah.
I think.
And be present.
Be present.
With other people and listen and just.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, good. Okay, let's go. Next question. How do you view, Rogério, this is for you, okay? We will start challenging us, okay? How do you view the issue of mental health?
Yeah. For me, that's the moment in terms of the big challenge we have. We don't have all the answers. Again, this is not only about the legislation coming. It's okay, we need to follow them. But looking at the people, I'm talking to the doctors in Shell. We started the program a few years ago and trying to understand what's going on. There is no magic. There is no one medicine. And sometimes it's easy just to say, hey, okay, you can pick up, your phone and call to the psychologist. This is not about. This is one way. I get a training this week in terms of mental health for leadership. It's okay. And one of the advice says, just listen. You are not the therapist. I thought, okay, not professionally, but you need to listen people. Yeah. For the first moment. Why? Because you are the first person. You will realize what's going on. And sometimes it's hard to realize. People, hey, how are you? Hey, I'm fine. Ask again, how are you? Well, I am not so good. So I think that's the first step. A lot of cultures is not good to say something in terms of privacy, in terms of retaliation. No. I have a family. I don't need to talk to anyone about my personal life. It's okay. But as a leader, we are seeing the mental health, it's been an issue, real one, and we need to learn how to treat that. Not the illness, but the people. Just receive these people. Be kind. Try to understand, look at the eyes. It's so bad we're not talking to people. You say, let's talk, Leah. Hey, tell me something. Okay, let me see my social media. Oh, no. Repeat again. No, this is terrible. And people are losing the opportunity to understand, to love people, to receive them well. It is a challenge, but this is, again, it is a big problem in terms of mental health. We need to share what we are learning with each other. Yeah, that's my first view in terms of this topic, but we have much more ahead. Yeah.
Lea, do you want to add something?
I think that we just need to remove the taboo thing about talking about mental health. I think that we still have that a lot.
We have a ton.
Yeah, I think it's real. I think that there's still many people that don't want to talk about this. And I think that many big companies have the programs on mental health.
Yeah.
We also have this, and we have been discussing a lot about this. But we have many others that think that that's not important, and unfortunately that has some impacts. And
It's interesting. Yeah, I agree. The big companies, you say, hey, you have money, you have investment. I heard these days, we are a small company. We don't have this program. Another day, I saw a bow tie. It's too interesting, look into the event in the middle, the left side, the threats and the consequences. I will never, forget one case of Andreza share with us. Find a guy that gets suicide. He says in the helmet, left a piece of paper, said, I quit. No more life. So this is terrible. So this is the worst part. But it could happen with everybody. So what we can do to be more kind and try to balance, not every problem is a big problem, but the small problem, it could be worse, and we need to be aware in terms of what we can do it better.
Yeah. I think these mental programs, the well-being programs,
Yes, well-being.
they are super good.
Yeah.
But I try to find here the numbers from a survey that shows that increase loneliness in the corporate world.
Loneliness, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's very complex. And I know that when we talk about this, we come with some programs. And the problem about these programs is that they are so not sometimes humanized. They're just programs that we need to implement. And then there's a training. And then you just do the training about mental health. Well, there was a situation that happened once with me, and we had seen a person with a super high potential, and this person was really, really great. And we started giving her things, and then there was going to be a big meeting, and she was going to coordinate all of that meeting, and then there was a Saturday. And then this person sent a message to me and to another leader. She was not my direct report, but she sent that message for both of us saying, I am super incompetent. I am in the hospital. I am with a chronic anxiety. And then I quit. You can dismiss me next week because I'm not competent and I'm not being part of the meeting. So it's been already some years. And of course, that after that, we helped her. But in the moment that we received that, I know that we are not therapists, professional therapists, but what do you do when you do this type of things? You see that person was suffering. That person was in pain. And she had said that she wanted us just to fire her because she was incompetent. There are so many more things that me as an engineer, I am not a therapist. How do I face this? How do I talk to this person that that's okay to fail? That's okay to go to the hospital. That's okay. Just you're not obliged to do what you're doing if you don't want to do this. So I think that in all of these mental health programs, there's more than a program. I think that we really need to rethink about what happened after pandemic, because we are seeing this happening just after pandemic much more. So is that a new world that we are living?
Yeah.
And that's not something that is going away. So how do we prepare not only people, but the leaders also to deal with the situation? How do we take care about the mental health of these leaders that are also here in the organization? And I agree with you, that's not a program that is going to help us.
Much more.
It's much more than that.
Perfect point, Megan.
Humans are complex. I think we all agree that humans are very complex. And I think one of the challenges for health and safety professionals is that for a topic like mental health, and then also more broadly psychosocial type of hazards, when it is brought into the workplace, it adds even more complexity. You know, depending on the country the listeners are in or each of us are in, there are different ways of thinking about mental health and services available or not available to people to support them. Yet, you know, our context that we're talking about here a lot is workplaces. And so what happens then when you bring in the complexity of humans into a workplace environment and you link it to other things like some countries recently introducing regulations or sections under health and safety legislation, with some situations being potentially compensable under workers' compensation type of laws, which then may impact the business operation, you know, of an organization. And so I think as a fellow human being, it's absolutely the right conversation for us to be having and for us to think about this from an empathetic and a human-based approach. But the complexity that is coming with the regulation of some of these topics and even understanding what is the proportion of work versus something else that may have contributed to someone's mental health. I think all of this needs a lot more conversation and discussion. And then perhaps the second part of it is the implementation of programs, and you both alluded to some of this. You know, many companies now are asking health and safety professionals to look after this, but at the same time, HR is looking after certain elements, and maybe legal and compliance is looking after something else, and then insurance. There are all these players from an occupational perspective who are trying to support employees and at the same time manage the risk for their organization, and it's just getting very messy and clunky. So I think we're going to be going through a little bit of a bumpy time for a while until we can figure out some things. And it's definitely, and Leah, you were saying this, depending on the different size of the company, the different culture of the company, every company is going to approach it slightly differently. And some countries, many countries, aren't even broaching the subject from an occupational health and safety perspective yet.
It's interesting. I was in a meeting, the first one with in Brazil, with the government, with the industry association and many companies like Shell. I was there representing, and the guy, brought the topic, and the doctors and the psychologists start to fight in the middle of the meeting.
Wow.
So guys, we are complex,
Yeah.
Megan. I totally agree. And this is not a business. But of course, we are naive. We have business. We have, people trying to get benefit. Sometimes it's fake, sometimes it's true. So we are going to be in a different universe. It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy, but we need to take care of people.
Yes, and I think this is one more challenge for leadership teams.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think is a big challenge.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Wow, we are almost at the end. How can you plan your career? I know who exactly will answer this question. How can you plan your career in health and safety and beyond health and safety? So, Leah, this is with you.
Okay. I think, and maybe what I'm going to say is just, it's not only for health and safety. I would say that to plan a career. In fact, when I think about what I did, I have never really thought about the small steps of the career that I wanted to give. I remember that I usually say this to other people too. I'd like to think about when I'm ending this corporate world, what I choose to be. So if I end this corporate world, what would I look back in terms of legacy, in terms of things, experiences, opportunities, things that I did that I really would be proud of, things that I would be curious about, that I would like to do. And after that, seeing that vision, coming back, and then you can plan something. So the type of experience, if you're in a company that has these opportunities for you to be in these different areas, what is the type of experience you want to leave? And then you have kind of this way of going there. I always see career as a mountain, many mountains, in fact, you see that, and then you want to be there, and then you have different paths, different ways of you getting there. Maybe sometimes you're getting in that path, maybe there's some other that you want to go, sometimes you want to just to stay a little bit more in that area, taking a look at the landscape, so there is some things that for me, career, you need to be open to think about this too. But then when you know what's your vision, when you know what you would like to be doing, there is a piece of intentionality that is also very important for you to have. So talking to people, understand what are the things you need to study. And that was something that I used to do. I do a lot. I study a lot. I do many things. So then you come back and then you start just to thinking, what are these different experiences? And once you have those type of different experiences, connecting to other people, doing the network, be very intentional about this, understand what can you help others, what are the type of competencies that you need to develop, and then be very sure about what you gain and what you lose. Because every time that you choose something in your career, every choice is also something that you renounce, right? And the other way. And that was also in many cases, I saw people that chose something that said, oh, but if I had chosen, forget about it. That was already something. What happened to me, though, it was when I envisioned what I wanted to be when I was retiring, in my 60s. But I got in this when I was on 40. So when I was at 40, I said, okay, I'm in a position that I dreamed about when I was 60. And that was something that for me was really hard because all of a sudden it got empty. So I had to rethink about what I wanted to do. And then that's when I decided that I wanted to have other types of experiences. And that's when I decided that I wanted to move out a little bit of the health and safety area, that I wanted to go back to something more focused on the business where I started. And then I started to understand what I had to do personally to do these changes. So I started to talking to people that I wanted to come back to product supply. It was manufacturing area. And my current boss now is the research and development lead of Bayer. He heard that I wanted to leave the area. And then there was all of the pandemic that I already told you. And then he reached out to me and said, and that was funny because then I saw there was this meeting in the calendar, and the current person that was in the position, he's my friend. And then I called my friend, what did we do wrong? Because your boss want to talk to me and I was in health and safety. We did something. What happened to the area? Because we always think no, it's nothing like that he wants to invite you to the selection process about this. So as I was very clear about what were the experiences that I wanted to do, when I talked to him, and then I asked, why me? Because that's the other thing, it's important for you also to have this discussion. Sometimes people invite you to something that you don't want, and that's not because somebody is inviting you that you need to go. I could match some of the experiences that I wanted to have to what he offered, and I could also contribute to what he wanted. So that's a bit how I see the plan of any type of a career.
Excellent. Miga, do you want to share? I think you had the experience outside EHS.
Yeah, I spent 1 year not working in health and safety. So out of the 31 years I've been working professionally, 1 year I spent not doing health and safety. And it was actually a really big goal of mine. So I was working in a tech company at the time, and I knew in my own mind when I would be leaving this company. I often say to people, I don't think it's wrong to choose to stay or not to stay at a company. So I knew when my date would be. And I thought to myself, maybe similar to Leah, I thought to myself, what do I want to do during the last year that I'm here? And this might be the only time I ever work for a tech company. It happened to be that it was not the only time I worked for a tech company. But I said to myself, I just want to learn more about this. And so I applied for a role that I knew that I had the leadership skills for, but I had none of the technical skills for. But I think what I showed is that I was a fungible and flexible leader, that there were certain characteristics that I had that made me able to be moved between different types of technical areas or professions and understand how the business operated, and was able to do that. And I've got to tell you, it was one of the best years ever.
Wow.
Because as a really curious person, I just wanted to learn some more. And also I'd set my own boundaries. You know, I wasn't forced into this. It was my choice. It was something that I chased. And it just brought me so much joy learning something else. The other thing it taught me, because obviously I did go back into safety after that, the other thing it taught me was that when you're a business leader and you've got goals that you're trying to achieve, people who are business partners to you, you need them to support you. So, you know, I didn't want the business partners, whether it was HR or finance or any business partner, coming with problems. I needed them to come with solutions. And so it also changed the way I thought about how I led safety teams going forward, and how, you know, they really need to be adding value to business leaders and business units, because it's such a hard job what they're doing. You know, in safety, we often lament and talk about, oh, it's so hard, you know, it's so difficult. And like, don't get me wrong, I've had many sleepless nights and shed many tears, you know, in this profession. But so are our colleagues. They're also doing really difficult things. And so, you know, as a safety professional, going to them with a problem, they don't need that, you know. And so the best thing I think you can do, and perhaps one of my biggest learnings out of this, was to come with solutions. A former colleague taught me a saying once, actually, they drilled it into my head, which was be the yes and person. Yes, comma, and. And I'm like, what do you mean? And what they said is when someone asked, can we do this? You never, as the safety person, said no. You would always say, yes, we can do it. And the way we can do it is this way. So I appreciated that learning. And I just feel like nearly every safety person should try something different, even if it's a stretch assignment or something else. It will totally change the way you think about your colleagues and the way that you support them and partner with them.
Perfect. Rogério.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot these days because tomorrow is my birthday. So, yeah, but looking back, you know, I'm so grateful to God and Shell for all the investments. And looking to the career for the future, I think it is important to use all the learnings that we have in life to develop people. So I got a car accident when I was 18 years old. So it was traumatic for me. But I transformed this experience into my personal life's purpose. So I think I am in debt with people, you know, that love, caring, you know, teaching, learning with them my whole life. This is not about retirement or career transition, because the famous, you know, question is, when you'll be in 5 or 10 years or so. So we don't know. But what our plan? We need to be prepared. Plan A, B, C, or D, you know. But not only for the changing the business area, I will be my whole life a leader, taking care of people. Here or there, it doesn't matter. So this is inside of me. So regardless my title, my company. So what we are doing now, I'm so happy, you know, sharing, learning. We were talking yesterday, Leah. Was quite interesting, receiving advices, giving, you know, working as a counselor. I don't know. I think it is important to learn every single day. So that's my plan in terms of life and career. Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter the plan, but I think one word to define is purpose.
Yes, it is.
Wow, good. Excellent. Let's go to the last one. What's the question? Let's go. How can you prepare the organization for crisis management? I would like to start with you.
Oh, that's a good one first to finish last week.
Get ready.
Yeah, well, I'll probably speak, you all can speak a little longer on this than I probably will. But, certainly there's various steps that we all know that we take, around understanding or anticipating what could go on. I think perhaps one of the biggest learnings that I had, from several crises that I've had to deal with over the years is that sometimes you don't have all the solutions, but you need to build a really strong team around the crisis itself and at different levels to address both the immediate thing that's happening, but also, the medium and the long term, whether it's reputational risk or various other things. But building a team around this crisis, both preparing and then also delivering the results, is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, perfect. Rogério?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the most basic instruction. When you start a meeting, for example, or a trip, or, everything you do, think in terms of emergency. This is not, again, a big book with all the instructions, but okay, guys, let's start this meeting. Please be careful. If you are watching, if you're at home or the hotel or on your customer side, please be aware in terms of the exits, the systems. Why? Because every moment bad things happen, all the time. Sometimes we are just being prepared for the big events, catastrophes. No, for the small one, my message is be prepared. Shell runs the big drills, 300-400 people at the same place, govern, army, fire departments, everybody together, make a lot of simulations, people getting engaged with the emergency, but we need to be prepared for anyone. So that's my message. Train, drill, get prepared and communicate well. Use all the resources, enough to that emergency. In a gas station, in office, at home, in a big refinery, in a power plant, it doesn't matter. We need to be prepared. So I think it takes time. This is not a checklist exercise, but we need to put the real scenarios, plausible scenarios to understand what could happen. So that's my message. Think in a worst scenario and be prepared all the time. Yeah.
I would like to explore we can have different kind of crises, and they come from different parts of the business. So I think the word is be prepared.
Yeah.
For different kinds, different areas.
Yeah.
So anticipate, be prepared. Leah.
No, it's totally this one, and I'm going to touch this point. I think that as safety professionals, that we are very used to think about simulations and risk management and crisis management. Not everybody in the business in other areas does this.
Yes.
And I can tell you this from being in the other side right now, and you could see that probably too. And I think that that's the moment, and I have, in fact, right now, the safety professionals are helping the business on the risk management exactly to anticipate any possible issue that we can have that we probably could not deliver the business. Because when I entered in the position, there was a situation exactly related to this. The lack of risk management, the lack of anticipation of the problems led to a huge problem that we had on the business. And then I think that we can offer too. I think that as safety professionals, we can offer our help. I think that we can get more interested about this deliverables of the company, of the other areas, of what the customer needs are, and how can we connect things and our competencies and our skills to be part of other teams in the organization on what we are doing, and really offering, hey, I'm seeing this here. I see that you don't have a FEMEA that is super connected to a HAZOP, for example, or, it's in the other area, but, or I see that you are not really anticipating a possible operational risk that you can have here, and you're not going to deliver your product. And I can help you to do something. Let's think together. Sometimes we don't see career opportunities on safety, because sometimes also we are not connecting, or you're too rigid or too closed in what we are doing. And I think that thinking much more about skill-based approaches, I think it's the trend of new organizations in the future. And I think that that's something good for us to do.
Perfect.
Yes, interesting. And I think we have just one more point in terms of reputation. For example, who remembers a long time ago, we ran the media training. In Shell, we used to do it with a TV reporter, very famous, come to the company and train you. Hey, like an explosion happened. So, hey, what you want to say right now? And put the microphone and say, hey, no. You need to know what to know and what to say properly. Training, it's not easy. Sometimes you say something that I couldn't say at that moment. We have lawyers, we have media, relation department, but now it's totally different. If something bad happened, everybody is a reporter. Why? Because it takes the phone, it starts a life. We don't wait to the TV coming. Everybody is a reporter, and they start to say many things. How we are trained to respond in this situation. The world's changing. The technology is there, and it's okay. It is good. But sometimes they are our enemy in terms of bad information. So again, we need to be prepared in these situations as well.
Yes. I received an invitation to talk in a safety week.
Yeah.
To talking about this. Because
Nice.
after accidents or incidents, they take the phone and start to in a live. So it's a good point. Guys, thank you. Wow. Amazing conversation. Wow, I'm very impressed. It was good. Good game. It's a podcast game, it is. So before we close, I would like to invite you to giving some wisdom words for all the guys that are watching us. So the last Windows words. Who can start?
Wisdom?
Wisdom words.
Wisdom.
So being wise. And that's assuming that we are wise.
That is too much for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I can start. Be humble. I think that's the best thing for us to do. Be humble, be open.
Yes.
Maybe mine is especially directed at safety people, that you're okay. You know what you're doing, and hopefully this is a career that you're really happy with and that you're enjoying, but that you're absolutely okay where you are right now in what you're doing.
Yeah, my message to the safety professionals, be proud. You have a noble career, and you are taking care of many people. But my message to you, take care of yourself as well. We need to be okay to help others. Sometimes you are not okay. And be humble, to open space to do it, create psychological safety, environmental, and be open, learning mindset. I think this is a journey. It's not a campaign, it's not a program, it's not a policy, it's not a procedure. Everything is okay, but we have a mission together. So let's do it together. So that's my message. And thank you so much, Andreza. That's the game.
The question for Andreza is, what are your wise words?
Yeah, she's the one.
Persistence. Persistence. Okay, be in the journey. I think it's a good journey.
Yeah.
I think I would like to end with this. Thank you, everyone. And see you in another podcast. Bye.
Bye-bye.